Hey everyone, it's Ro with Ro's Wigglers here to share another adventure with you. Sorry about the shaky camera. I'm working with this hangy thing, but we're going to get some better infrastructure pretty soon. Today I am about to prepare an order of our worm mix, which is a mixture of our red and European nightcrawler worms, along with a good amount of live bedding for someone to get their very first worm bin started. And so in order to do that, I'm going to do the light method today. And so I wanted to kind of take you along on the journey for how I do this process. So what I have here is an empty bin that's just a little bit out of camera view. And then one of my bins that has been serving as a breeder bin, but I'm going to pull from here my worm mix in order to create this order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cover off of here, my little worm blanket, as some of you may hear me lovingly refer to it as. And we do have still a pretty impressive amount of moisture happening in this bin right now. Because I do keep my breeder bins on the wetter side, it's ideal for breeding conditions. Not so much what I recommend for a beginner. But the edges are a little bit dry, and so when I mix it together, that's going to help get this material a little bit more where I want it. Here's a worm floating right on top. This is the bag I'm going to fill with my worm mix. Now I know that this bin here has somewhere between 150 and 200 worms in here because that's what I started with. And so possibly it also has more than that. But that's kind of what we're rolling with to get this going. So for this part of the adventure, I don't have to count every single worm. But what I do need to do is separate out some of this bedding because I have so much in here that it's not going to fit in this bag, and I don't need that much for my worm mix. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me put my gloves on for this part just because it's going to get a little messy. I do like to touch all of this, but for this part, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Also, check out this new hoodie. I have new hoodies and t-shirts now on our website, so I'm very excited about that. Going to be rolling these things out, getting more people, especially locally, to start wearing them, and letting people get in on the action and have a better understanding of how amazing vermicomposting can be. Okay, so I just fluffed this up a little bit, and part of what this is going to do is, one, help to kind of balance out the moisture in the spots that are a little more wet, and two, I'm going to get the worms. Worms don't like light, so what they're going to do is, now that I've kind of agitated them a little bit, they're going to keep going down to get away from the light. And as they go down, I am going to pull off just a little bit at a time of this top layer of bedding that I have in my bin. Excuse my furnace. We have now reached the cold part of the season where I can't really turn it off, so hopefully it won't interfere with the sound too much. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just very gently take off this top layer of bedding, and I'll look through it a little bit and see if I see any worms. But the good thing is that they're just going to keep moving down. And what we're probably going to find, this is what happened the last time I did this, is that we're going to have probably, hopefully, a nice juicy worm ball where they've all congregated around the food that they're working to break down. So that's going to help me get a lot of them right in one big handful. But I can't guarantee. Worms do what they want. So I'm going to just keep taking off this top layer of bedding. As I'm taking this off, the worms are going down, and I'm kind of moving to different parts of the bin at a time. Here's a little baby worm. Oh, I missed it. So that as I continue to take stuff down, got a worm, a couple worms, the worms will have time to move down. But I do have a few. It does look like we have a good amount of babies in here, so they've been busy and they've hatched despite my best efforts of removing as many cocoons as possible. We still got some babies in this batch, which is how it goes. But I'm going to keep pulling material. this will be a bit of a process. That's why I told my friend Joe that's picking up this order, I need at least 20 minutes to get this ready for him, because I can't just like keep worms hanging out in bags just waiting for someone to order them. I guess I could, but I won't, because I love my worms. That's a piece of old apple that they haven't gone to yet. Here is a piece of sweet potato that they're just getting started on. Get this little guy. Leave that sweet potato there. And put this little worm in the bag. I'm going to keep going. Here's a pumpkin stem. This is going to take a long time to break down, so I'm just going to keep tossing it back in the bin and back in the bin until eventually one day I no longer find it anymore. Got a tea bag. So you see this bin has actually had a more recent feeding. So we have stuff that is still recognizable in there. Here's a worm. Put you in your little bag. And this is great too, because this order came actually from a friend of mine. Oh, there's a produce sticker. Get that out of there. And I know he has a kiddo. That kiddo is, I don't know, actually maybe in high school now. So he might just be doing it for himself. He is an avid gardener, so I know he's going to be super into the worm castings, which is great. But I have been telling people, if you have kids, definitely consider starting a worm bin, because kids are super, super into this, and it is such a great opportunity for them to get to learn and observe and troubleshoot and try out their creative thinking skills. I just sold a worm mix to a family yesterday, and the person emailed me and said that she had a kid, a 4-year-old, that was really excited to see if the worms were going to want to eat grapes. And I just thought that was really cute. And there's going to be so many more opportunities like that the more I get to work with people and get them to explore the world of vermicomposting, which is the reason I started Rose Wigglers in the first place. I want to help beginners build the confidence to get started. Because once they get started, it's off to the races. It's just that step of feeling confident enough to start in the first place. We're going to leave that worm. It doesn't look too happy. Here's a nice big one. Just keep going through this bedding. This is a little bit of a tedious process. I much prefer to, go through and sift when I can, or not pull from a container that has so much bedding. But I just recently reset my breeder bins, and so I have a lot more bedding to go through to separate out these worms. And the rest of my worms that I would typically pull from, I have gone through almost all of my grow out bins and everything else that I had going that was not specifically set up to be a breeder bin, to get ready for this vending event that I have coming up this weekend. And I've made a lot of ready to go worm bins with those worms to get them situated and ready to sell. Which means I don't have a lot of worms on backup currently. I have a lot of cocoons that are waiting to hatch and grow out. But I made a lot of ready to go worm bins because I'm just not really sure how many people at this event are going to want to get a worm bin versus, how many will just want worm castings. I'm sort of expecting a higher number of people to want just the worm castings, because this is a really big, one of the first seed swaps of the year. So we're going to have a lot of excited gardeners that show up. And they're going to be primarily thinking about seed starting and planting. And, there might be some people like me there that are, big picture, long term infrastructure kind of thinkers. That will want to have the opportunity to start producing their own worm castings forever. But I'm guessing there will be a lot of people that are just going to want those worm castings to help with their seed starting and to mix into their garden beds. So I have a lot of worm castings that I have already prepared as well for this event. But we'll see. I'll keep you posted. And this is going to give me a little bit of a general idea of kind of the local layout. What are people interested in? How do I want to structure and target things, that sort of thing. So I'm really excited to go. One, just because I'm going to get to feed off of the energy off of all of these excited gardeners, which is one of my favorite things. But also because I'm going to get a general idea of what I'm working with in terms of, sales. I'm still at the very beginning of this journey as a business. I've been keeping worms for about 7 years, but I haven't been selling worms until a couple months ago. So this is all brand new to me, and it's been very fun and exciting, new learning. I highly recommend, if someone is considering getting into worm farming, just go for it. Take the steps. You can start small. You don't have to be huge right away. You don't have to be like Mimi's Worms or Arizona Worm Farm, who are awesome, by the way. You should check them out. Check out Captain Matt. Great established businesses that you can learn a lot from. But start small. Like, you can do any small little amount because it's going to benefit you no matter what, because you get to play with worms. And you don't need a ton of space. This is like, similar to when people go into business doing microgreens. You could start with, your basement and some shelves. That's what I've got going on. I have several sets of shelves and a couple big bins, and we're hanging out in my basement right now. Now in the future, I really want some land and a big building and big windrows and like some serious wedge systems. But I'm starting here and I'm learning, and that way by the time I get to that place, I will have a lot more skills, knowledge, experience, and be able to scale up and be able to do that effectively because I'll have that foundation in place. We're getting closer. I think we're definitely going to have a worm ball here because if y'all have been paying attention, I haven't actually found too many worms so far, which means that they are all hanging out right around where I left their last feeding in the center of this bin. To give you a little update what it looks like here so far. So in the center there is where that feeding is going to be. So once I get down into that, I think we're going to probably find a worm ball, which is always very, very exciting. Some coffee grounds that they haven't gotten to yet. Ooh, nice big worm. You're going to go to your new friend Joe. Hope Joe doesn't mind that I'm shouting out his name. He's got a really common name, so nobody will know it's him. Whereas if your name was Roe, there's, maybe 2 other Roes in the whole St. Louis area that I know of. So if somebody hears something about somebody named Roe, I better hope that I did something right, because otherwise everyone's going to know it was me. Here's a worm. Yeah, getting into these pieces of food here. Not a lot happening so far, which is kind of good because that's making this part of the process easier for me to get into what will hopefully be a more consolidated mass of worms. Let me know. Who else uses the light method? Do you have a preference of light method versus sifting versus horizontal migration? So for beginners, there's a lot of different ways to separate your worms from your bedding, and people have preferences, and it's all kind of based on context and some other things. But experienced worm farmers usually have their preferences, and some good reasons for why they do things the way that they do. So worm farmers out there, comment below and share with us, what are your preferred methods and why? Do you do different methods for, you know, different outcomes, whether you're like getting your worms ready to weigh up for sale versus getting ready for a breeder bin versus resetting your bin, or do you do the same all throughout? Do you use a bait trap, or what do you do? Let us know. I would love to see more engagement in my comments. I will always answer them. I get very excited when people engage with what I've got going on and, you know, let me know their opinions and their input. If they do something differently, I'd love to know that. I always want to learn more. So I've been on this learning journey for quite some time now, and I still learn more every day. And to me, that's the beauty of being a farmer, of being a worm farmer. That's why I'm in this work. It keeps my brain occupied constantly, and my brain has to be occupied. I don't know, you've heard the term busy body. I'm a busy brain, and I'm just full speed ahead most of the time, thinking about stuff and strategizing and learning and taking in new information, and that's the way I need it. So yeah, let me know. Here's a worm, a couple worms and some food. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Worms and some food. Okay. Here's one. This out of here. Got a few in this handful. Oh, big one. Couple babies. Here we go. Now we're getting where I want to get. To get a good handful, I'll zoom in for you. Also, for people who do YouTube, what tips do you have for me? What kind of camera setup do you have? What do you use to hold? I just use my phone. What do you use to hold your phone in place and have it where you want it? If you can like share links or anything like that. I am not tech savvy, and I am really trying to figure this all out. I had a good friend that shared a couple apps with me for different ways to do video editing. I still haven't done much with that, but I'll get there. And ooh, here's a good handful. Ooh, see them there. How do you get your lighting where you want it so you can show people your handfuls of worms? You know, all that. Give me some tips. I could use them. Been working on some tricks with like captioning so that we can definitely have more inclusive videos. Definitely wanting that to be a thing. Got some good handfuls of worms here. This must be a bin that I took worms from before, because I'm actually, like, there's a decent amount here, but it does not feel to me like 150 or 200 worms. So I'm actually going to take what's left in this bin and add it to the bag. But then I'm going to pull out another bin and make sure that we're not shorting anybody. I don't know, maybe they ran away. But I'm assuming this is a bin that I pulled from before and then just stuck back in there and didn't refill with more breeders. So let me get this out. I'm just going to dump the rest of this into here so I can start with the fresh one. Okay. I always check to make sure I don't have any worms stuck to the bottom or the sides of my bin, because that often does happen, and I don't want them to just dry out and die due to my negligence. Okay, this is good. So let me grab another bin. One sec. Let's see if this microphone goes all the way with me into my little breeder room. You can't see me so much, but you know. Alright, let me pull this one. See what we're working with here. set that all back up later. Okay, let's see if this one gives us a little more of what I'm looking for. Oh yeah, okay. Good moisture level. Some worms hanging out on the top of this lid here. They love that. They love the worm blanket. They like to go up and like hang out in that condensation, I think, is a big thing for them. Okay, so this one I'm going to mix like I did the last one. The edges are a little dry and crispy, and then we have a lot of moisture in the middle. And part of that is because I have bigger, chunkier material bedding this round. I added a lot of like new leaves and stuff like that. And part of it is because I've had a space heater running nonstop in there to help keep the temperature where I want it. So the bedding dries out more quickly, which means I need to check it more often, and it just is what it is. Here's a nice big fat worm. All right, back to what I was doing. Get some of this top bedding off of here so we can get to the worms. Here's a nice one. Just keep doing this. I do really like the videos that I follow, the YouTubers I follow that really just kind of take you along on the process. Like Plant Abundance, I watch her all the time. Her name is Anne, and it's usually like my wind down where I'm just watching another worm farmer sift their worms and talk about it. So those videos can get pretty long. I'm still trying to get a feel for like what I want for the length of my videos. So if you got any feedback on that, on what you would prefer, let me know. If you want shorts, seems like more people have watched my shorts, but I don't know. I'm still trying to figure all that out. So let me know. Got more bedding. This bedding is really nice and warm too, which is good. This is like, the worms are going to be thriving and breeding away in here for the next just under 21 days because they've been in there. I just reset these bins the other day. So every 21 days or 3 weeks is when I'll go in and I'll sift out these breeder bins so that I can remove any cocoons and only leave the adult worms in there to continue breeding. And I put the baby worms in my grow out bins to get mature and also make me a lot of worm castings in the process. And then they eventually, once they mature and I can see their little clitellum, I'll put them in the breeder bins as well. Oh yeah, this is going to be where we find some good stuff. This is what I like. I'm just like searching for worms and seeing what I find. This is also giving me the opportunity, to check in on what's happening in my bin, see if there's anything I need to address. If I have like an overabundance of something, maybe a certain kind of mite, or, for the most part, I really like diversity in my bins. I like a lot of the creatures that are in here besides just the worms, because they are all part of the soil food web and they're all part of the decomposition process. So they are working together to help break down this material. It's not just the worms. There's a lot of creatures in there that are referred to as shredders that break down the material so that it can be actually accessible for the worms. So not just worms in here eating all my food scraps and coffee grounds. They got friends. Got people helping them out. Not people. Oh yeah, look at this. This is a carrot. Oh, kicked my space heater. Let me get this lighting right. This carrot is covered in worms that are inside the carrot trying to eat it. So I'm not going to pull them away from their happy carrot. I'll let them keep that. But I'll put these two that just landed in my hand in the bag. Here you go, wormies. Okay. Oh yeah, this one's going to have a worm ball. I have found it. So since we don't have to go through this whole bin, I'm just going to skip and get right into where I see this worm ball and get these guys in this bag. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Oh wow. Okay. This is the number of worms that I want. Oh gosh, I can't get this in camera. This whole handful basically is just worms. You see it? I need the camera to be closer to where the light is. Next round. Anyway, all these are going in the bag from a friend Joe, along with some of the food that they are currently working on, because they're going to be very excited about that. And just to make sure, I'm going to do another big handful of worms, because oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, we're going to zoom this camera next time. This is absolutely just nothing but worms. So freaking cool. We're going to not give him this whole thing. We're going to do, yeah, here we go. This is definitely more than promised, more than he paid for. But he's a good friend, and why not? Okay, get these other little guys back into here. Okay, now the last step that I want to do for the worms is just make sure I have enough bedding in there with them for him to get his bin started. So again, one of the big things that I provide with my worm mix is not just the worms. Like a lot of worm farmers will weigh out their worms and then remove all of the live bedding that they're in and pack them up in dry peat moss instead. And I understand why they do that, but I prefer to really keep them as happy and have as low level of stress on their transition as possible. And also, this is introducing all of that microbiology into the brand new worm bin, which you want. You don't want to start off a sterile worm bin because the worms will freak out and they'll try to leave and they won't be happy and they won't be able to really access their food because there won't be any microbes in the bin to break it down. So this is what really makes that happen, is this live bedding. So I'm going to make sure to fill this all the way to the top with my live bedding. Okay, get one more little handful here. Okay. Really gotta get like some towels or something down here. I don't have a hand sink down here. Okay, so then I'll just tie this off, and then that's gonna be it for this video pretty much. I'm gonna combine this other bedding that I separated out in with the remaining worms in this bin and put it back in the little breeder room. And I'll get Joe's package ready with everything I had in one of my previous videos, with the instructions for how to set up your bin, some extra shredded cardboard, a sticker for how to maintain your bin, a sticker for what to do with the worm castings, and I think that's it. But yeah, until next time. Oh, one more thing I want to start to introduce is our slogan. So you see on the back of my hoodie, it might read backwards, but new slogan: healthy soil, healthy plants, happy worms. Until next time, it's Ro with Rose Wigglers.